So last week we started with this idea of a time audit. We went through really looking at where we spend our time, how we spend these pockets of time. And so this week, what I want to focus on is how do we, what I call, create more time, which isn't a magic trick because we all have the same minutes in an hour, the same hour in a day, the same days in a week, and so on, right? So we all have the same amount of time, but there are opportunities to get intentional and really feel like we are creating time. And it's wonderful and it's powerful and it's accessible to all of us. And so I want to start with sharing that quote that I mentioned that I started with. And I'm also going to drop this in the chat for those of you who feel moved by this quote. Perhaps you know the work of Viktor Frankl. I think it's always just really helpful to frame him up. He is a Holocaust survivor. He is the only one from his family that survived, and he went on to the world of neuroscience and psychology. And there's a very moving and powerful book that I poke through occasionally. It's a heavy read and very powerful. But one of the quotes that he says, and it sticks with me, and I brought it here over the years to this broadcast before, which is this: between stimuli and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I'm going to read that just one more time, and I want you to really hear it. Between stimuli and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So to me, what he is saying there is that it is not the external lives that we live that drive our power, our choice, our intention, and I'm just going to put in our time. It's our relationship to that. And so there's an external response. A report is due, 200 unchecked emails lie in your inbox, 5 things to do this weekend, and relax and self-care is not one of them, right? That's an external response. And our brain, by design, goes on to autopilot. It wants to create and works really hard to create efficient patterns that take choice and awareness out of the equation. And that's not a bad thing. That is a good thing. Choice and intention can be exhausting. It's mentally exhausting to roll over choices over and over and over again. So our brain, by design, wants to create a pattern to become very efficient. That is a good thing. And there are times where that reaction, that response we have to the outside stimuli no longer serves us. And yet we just do it because it's on that autopilot. So there is this moment, this fraction of a second, this place where we can go in, get intentional, create a response. We create time in that, because what we know is our autopilot responses sometimes, while in the moment save us time, suck up a whole lot of time in other places, right? So my auto response to, I don't have time for me, I don't have time for me, I can't take a break, I don't have time to make a good meal for myself, I don't have time to have that challenging conversation, I don't have time to ask for what I need, that ends up costing us a whole lot of time later on down the road, right? Either in our health, in medical appointments, in job loss, in broken relationships, in, whatever it is. And so that's why I call this creating time. There's a cost up front. but we end up saving ourselves so much time in the end, mental time, spiritual time, actual time as well. And so, what we're going to do in our practice today is try to find that space between stimuli and response. Mindfulness, A, begins to elongate that. And B, it gives us the ability to go in and become, and there's a lot of different titles for this. It might be the reflective investigator, it might be the observer, it might be the silent witnesser. I call mine my loving observer. It's the ability to go into that moment between stimuli and response and lovingly observe myself, my own responses, my own physical reactions, my own go-to stories, my own auto responses, etc. Personally, I narrate it to myself and I say it in this way that's like, girl, look at you. Girl, look at what just happened for your body when you did that. You know, listen to your breath. What's going on right now? Girl, that's an old story. What else do you want to choose? That's what's happening in my brain. That's the voice I give myself, my loving observer. And that's been work rather than what is wrong with you. Right? Snap to it. Get this done. Like I've had to work to replace that inner voice. So we're going to play with that in today's practice. Getting aware that there is time and space between an external response and an external stimuli and a response, and then lovingly going into that, expanding time and observing ourselves. So go ahead and close your eyes or take a soft gaze. Find your breath and just deeply pull it into your body. And then slowly exhale. And again, deeply through your nose, bringing your breath into your body. And then slowly exhaling. We're going to do that one more time. Through your nose, slowly inhaling, feeling your chest expand, your belly expand. And then a slow, purposeful exhale, feeling the belly collapse and the chest collapse. Allow your normal flow of breathing to replace that deep breath. And as you return to your normal flow, find your body in this moment and invite it into an intentional practice pose. And that means different things for different people, but it's just intentionally bringing your body into this moment, using it as a physical cue to say, I'm paying attention right now. I'm going into that space. I'm becoming the loving observer or the silent witness, whatever phrase you'd like to use, the investigator of self. And so you might find a strong base either in your feet or your bottom, finding a balance, a grounding, feeling your head lift, your chin tuck, feeling your shoulders just return to their socket, your shoulder blades on their back. You might find a place for your palms that feels good and intentional for you. Might be palms up, palms down, hands together. I want you to call to mind something right now that might be challenging for you. Could be a scheduling conflict. Could be a relationship issue, a work challenge might be very complex, it might be very seemingly simple. Might be a just something you want to do and you haven't done it yet. Taking that break, taking your full 15-minute break, going on a walk after work, slicing up cucumbers and bringing them to work, anything, finding that thing. And then I want you to imagine climbing to the top of a peak, a mountain. Maybe you're even in an airplane, some place where you get to observe the view. And when we observe the view, we're never really judging it, right? Oh, that's wrong. That can't be there. We're just looking. And lots of times when we're at a viewpoint, we get curious. I wonder how far it is from here to there, for example. So we're going to bring that spirit into this practice. We are observing ourselves from that viewpoint, from that safe viewpoint, observing ourselves in relationship to that challenge. And allow just loving, compassionate, empathetic curiosity to present itself. And you can give it whatever voice, whatever accent. Just notice that whenever judgment comes up, you should know how to do this. This should have been done long ago. What's wrong with me that I'm still figuring this thing out? Any of those things, we don't have to fight those alligators or struggle with them. We just notice them. And then we bring ourselves back to the voice of that loving investigator. And so we might just start with the felt sense of being in that moment. Observing your body's response to that challenge. Noticing, is there tension? Is there numbness? Is there busyness? Noticing your breath as you engage with this challenge. Is it a deep resignation sigh? Bringing curiosity to the messages that you give yourself surrounding that challenge. How do I talk to myself when I'm thinking about this, when I'm challenged by this? What's the pattern to that messaging? What are some beliefs that exist here? For example, is there a belief that there just isn't enough time? Where do your values show up in here? Notice if there's judgment creeping in, and just bring yourself back to that loving observer. And then you might get even more curious about, how would I do this if this challenge wasn't here? What kind of support do I want to give to myself? What would be so helpful to hear or to know right now? How could I bring my values into focus? What if I believe there was enough time? Just playing and getting curious. I'm going to quickly close. I'm noticing the time. I've taken us over. So I'm going to just bring you back into your breath, reminding you that that curious observer, that loving witness is there for you to play with, to bring in, to invite. There is space between the stimuli and our response. Getting curious how you use that. Slowly opening your eyes, coming back together. Thanks for joining me today.